Live now.
Okay.
All right, I hear you all. You hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
It's
Yay.
amazing what a reboot will do.
There you go.
All right. So we'll give it just a few minutes for people to join back in. Thank you all very much for um, working with me through the technical delay. It's always a challenge, but I love the system. I'm going to figure it out, and and that's that. I know I'm going to figure it out. So
That's
Good for you. I was just telling China Rose I would have given up by now.
AJ, no, 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 absolutely not. This
so I'm the tech of the family, just so you know.
Oh, okay, okay. So
That's what that means.
that makes sense how AJ would have given up. It would be like, oh,
Yeah.
forget
Yes.
this, forget this. Somebody else was like,
I'm
can
gonna go
they?
outside and lift some heavy stuff and fix something.
Everybody needs to know what it is that they can do. They need to know their role, and I'm glad you know, AJ. That's
Yeah,
absolutely fabulous. So you're not in the way of other stuff. Fabulous,
exactly.
exactly.
I'm gonna leave you to it.
Absolutely. Yes, we're back. Good morning, Angela. Thank you for the encouragement. The reboot worked magic. So we're gonna give people a couple of seconds to join. I'm glad you all can hear us now. I'm excited for this conversation. I was getting ready to be very disappointed if we weren't able to have it today. So I'm glad that everything is working out and we are back here together. So, good morning. My name is Jewel Pearson. This is what I am calling the Creating Home, a Tiny House series. This is the Conversations on Intimate Spaces piece of the Tiny House series. In 2015, I built what I consider to be a fabulous tiny home that I adore. And since that time, I have shared my journey to hopefully inspire others who are interested in the movement. I offer coaching and consultations and workshops to help people achieve tiny house living. It is my goal and dream in this movement to build literal and figurative community and then along the way serve up a lot of representation as I'm doing it. So thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. Thank you to my guests AJ and China Rose for joining us this morning. This is, as I said, the conversation series. And so I've shared that I believe our homes tell a story about us. And we were talking about this when you all were able to visit the other week. Whether it's an intentional story or an unintentional story, and I tend to think for most tiny house people, it is an intentional story that goes into the designing, the thought into going into a tiny house period, into the design of the house and your decisions around your home. And that's what I absolutely want to explore in these conversations. And I thank you all for joining me this morning or this afternoon to have this conversation. So please let me ask you both to introduce yourself to the audience, to the world.
Sure. My name is China Rose Zamora. I was thinking about like what is it that I feel important people know about me. I just have always felt passionate about curating my own education in this life to be able to provide the types of services that I feel are needed and valuable. So I throughout the years, the last 25 years, really have, gotten training as a clinical herbalist, as a functional nutritional therapist, a yoga teacher. And I don't know, I consider myself a student of life. Like I learn something new every day. I learn from myself and my inner wisdom. I learn from our community, our clients, our experiences as we travel. So that's the most important thing to me is just to keep learning every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
I'm AJ.
AJ, that's not your introduction. So let's go with
We
it.
need more.
I'm the brawn in the relationship. I fix stuff. No, I actually have worn many hats throughout my life. And right now I'm focusing on the training that I've done and curated over the last 25 years to help people transition into healthier lifestyles, really. So everything from permaculture, that I just finished a course on that, help people learn how to grow their own food. Functional fitness, that was one thing that, you know, I became a personal trainer a while ago, but I really don't like the gym. I don't like lifting weights just for the sake of it. Like, I want to be productive. So I'd rather go like lift heavy rocks and build a wall, right? But you need to learn how to move your body correctly so that you don't hurt yourself when you're moving heavy rocks to build a wall.
That makes sense.
So I like to combine like that whole gardening, permaculture, learning how to, you know, steward the land with how to move your body properly in order to do that long term sustainably. So that's kind of where my focus is now.
Okay. I like that.
She's also the mixologist of our business. She's the holistic culinary chef. Like, I'm telling you, we have many hats in this tiny house. You'd be surprised how many we can fit in here.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all.
It's all the things that we're passionate.
Yeah, everybody else is surprised at how much we can do in a tiny house, but I'm not surprised at all. So absolutely. So as we have this conversation, the foundation of the conversation obviously is the tiny house. And so what I want to do is share the pictures and design inspiration that you all shared with me, with our audience, and kind of have you walk us through what all of it means to you and how it represents home for you. So are you able to see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is good for me because it kind of reminds me of how my house got started, and mine got started with a piece of graph paper and a ruler, and it turned into, you know, the house that I adore today. So let's talk about your design and the thoughts that went into putting your design together.
This is your drawing, so you need to go for it.
Yeah. You know, part of the details of it was just through what was important to us in the house we lived in at the time. Like, where did we spend most of our time? What was the priority there? Because we didn't want to cram everything that goes into a big house into a tiny house.
Absolutely.
Like, that wasn't the point of it. So we just thought about like what the most important thing, where we spent most of our time. And honestly, majority of our time is spent in the kitchen. We cook almost every meal or prepare every meal that we eat. And yes, we go out here and there when we find a cool farm to table restaurant or when we're traveling here and there. But really, we shop at farmers markets and try and get local fresh produce and that regularly throughout the week. So we need counter space for our fruit bowls, and we needed a big sink, and we needed a stove, and so half of the house is kitchen.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry. I've always said that you definitely have to pay attention to how you use your space as you're designing your tiny house. That's just, to me, common sense. But and you all were definitely on the opposite end of the spectrum for me, because yours is mostly kitchen, and kitchen was kind of the minor detail in mine, because I'm not big on cooking, even though I'm growing into that. But I agree with that. Like, what is it that matters most for you in incorporating it into the design in this smaller space and not trying to cram everything in? So I totally agree with that direction, and it makes perfect sense to me. So this is an outside drawing.
Yeah, I mean, AJ was the one who actually presented the idea of tiny living to me, and like this is after many months of her like trying to create this like complete idea so that I could really have it sink in and get a feel for it. And I like to say that my heart said yes right away, but my brain was like, well, what about this? And what about that? And
Right.
so when she told me that I could be a part of designing it to look however I wanted it to look, like I jumped in
Okay.
with both feet.
Okay.
We're both artists, and we love, you know, the aesthetics of architecture and, you know, just art and creating. And so for me, I was like, I didn't even really have to think about it. The Vardo wagon style was exactly what I always dreamed of, you know, in terms of just like my aesthetic. And I love the idea of the, you know, the nomadic lifestyle, the traveling medicine women. So it all kind of came together in this design of a Vardo wagon.
Right. Right. I think the opportunity to design your own space is just so important, and stands out for me as well. Like you're designing your home, you're designing, you know, your lifestyle, you're designing your dream. And I think that is something that a tiny house provides an opportunity that most people don't necessarily recognize in a larger space.
Yeah. Yeah. It was like nothing I'd ever experienced to see my drawings, you know, come to fruition into this
Hmm.
physical space. And,
Yeah.
um, you know, that this picture of the door, AJ found this amazing artist in, were they located in Mexico, I believe?
They had a place in San Diego, but then also in Mexico, and that's in Mexico is where they did all of their design work and art. They do doors for all kinds of different buildings, but it's all out of barnwood, reclaimed barnwood. And when I was looking for a Dutch door for our space, like we knew we wanted a Dutch door.
I did
And then when
too.
I started looking for them, I couldn't find anything that fit our aesthetic, or it
Hmm.
was super expensive. It was
Hmm.
either really cheap materials with like, but they charged way too much,
Right. Okay.
or it was like really ornate and heavy and expensive. So I happened to I just put in the search terms online just as much as I could, you know, Dutch door, barnwood Dutch door, like any combination of those words. And I came across someone who had his daughter actually had set up an Etsy page for him.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
awesome.
And so that's how I found the artist. And I asked her, you know, would he be willing to make a door? And because I had spent so much time trying to find it, we kind of were on a time crunch at that
Okay.
point, and
Okay.
what it would take. And so she contacted him, and they basically were like, if you can get us the design within 24 hours, then we can have it to you by then. And so I'm like, China Rose, you have one day to draw whatever your dream door is.
So China, you drew this. This is gorgeous, and I know there's a picture that shows the actual door. So this is gorgeous. I love this. I love the lotus.
Thank you.
And I love that it is, you know, it's the signature, the representation for your home. And then there's gonna a picture later that just kind of shows this is what people are seeing as you all are moving down the street. So this is just really, this is your logo basically.
Yes. And yeah, we were overjoyed to be able to work on it with the manufacturer that we partnered with. That was really important to us. So we, you know, traveled to Idaho to help out. And so yeah, being a part of it was huge. It really
Absolutely.
helped us feel connected to it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
And so, yeah, here you're seeing, the view from basically the front door kind of taken above our heads. So you see our kitchen is the whole space down the right-hand side with the huge farm sink. The whole kitchen's basically designed around the farm sink.
Okay.
And and another great art piece from an artist in Mexico. We were really thrilled to find that. And actually on the whole left-hand side, these are pieces of furniture that belonged to my great-grandmother. They were sitting in storage and no one was using them, and they were kind of getting a little bit dinged up and such in storage. And I just really carefully presented the idea to my mom. I was like, how would you feel if we repurposed Nana's furniture? And she felt really good about it. She's like, it's meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to be lived in, and for it to continue to, continue to provide this like homey feeling. And it did. It made our tiny house feel like home immediately. Yeah. So I'm just so grateful that, the people we worked with were able to cut down the table, and actually the table actually still folds down against the wall when we move. Mm-hmm. So they used all the original pieces, but reconfigured that a bit. They used the extra pieces to make the cabinet above so that was all repurposed. And the buffet, what used to be her buffet, is now our clothing storage. So that's nice. Really helpful
to have her as part of your build. I love that you all incorporated actual furniture, because oftentimes that's not something that's done in a tiny house where you're, space is a premium. So you're trying to do convertible stuff and not actually have furniture. So I really love that you were intentional about doing that, and that it means something, from an ancestral perspective. That's actually very, very touching.
Yeah, it gave it heart. It did. Mm-hmm. And I'd say the other really big thing to point out in this picture is the bed. We get questions about the bed all the time.
That's what I was going to ask you to talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, so AJ designed it, so I'll let her speak to it.
Yeah, well, going back to where we spent most of our time in our bigger house is, it definitely wasn't the bedroom. We were, if we weren't cooking or working, we were outside. Mm-hmm. We were hiking or, finding something fun to do outside. So the bedroom was just meant for sleeping. And I mean, you know what I mean? You know what I mean?
AJ, I got you. AJ. Let's go.
You're only in there, in the evenings for the most part. We're not nappers. We don't lounge in bed and watch TV. We don't work from bed. Like, I know there's other people that use their bed as a space for other things, but really we're not loungers.
Got you.
Basically. So I just wanted it to be out of the way when we weren't using it. And I didn't want to have to crunch down into a loft every time I got into bed either.
Gotcha.
So that's why I figured, if we could, you've seen the things in the garage where you have your storage. It's like a storage rack and it goes up and down.
Yes.
So that you don't have to climb up to get it. But that's what I was thinking with the bed. Like, well, maybe we can just use one of those. And because they're designed to hold really heavy stuff.
Okay.
Use that. But in the end, the person who built it for us didn't end up using one of those. And I can't remember why.
It's because the walls are slanted. So it would have been able to work.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so, it's meant to be.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. Anyway, yeah, it just wasn't going to work. So he used a tow winch instead and cable wire.
Okay.
But yeah, my whole thing was I just want it up out of the way when we're not using it. And then when we bring it down, it's down low enough that you can still kind of walk under it. You do have to crunch, but the sink and stove and refrigerator are all still available without having, it's just over the counters.
Yeah.
Oh,
and it comes down far enough.
Okay.
Yeah, we just need a step stool to jump up in it. So it's convenient and easy. And if one of us does want to lounge while the other one is doing stuff, we can.
Yeah. It worked really great for us.
I love that. And again, I think it's one of the bonuses of designing your own home so that it makes sense for how you use your space and it's functional for your needs. And that just makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So this is just, yeah, a great view of the table. I love, Jewel, that you say you don't have to sacrifice, luxury or fabulousness to live tiny, because we had our wedding china with us for a long time. We have these great, all the things that bring us joy. We're very
Right,
aesthetic people,
right,
right? So,
right.
um,
And
yeah,
while things aren't necessarily the focus, having some of your things is important. You don't have to have all the things, but a few select
Paring down,
pieces.
absolutely. Paring down to
Yeah.
your favorite things. And I always say how important that is, paring down to those favorite things that make home for you. And
Yes.
I agree with the same thing. It wasn't that big of an adjustment for me to move into my space because I had home with me, the things that I knew represented home. And so, yeah, I get
Yes.
that totally. So let's also talk about, so I'm going to still go through all the pictures, but I think it's important to note, and we'll talk about this in detail, the work that you all do around wellness and eating real meals. I think this table setting is representative of that. And I want to touch on that just a little bit, and then I want to talk about that in full blown mode in just a few minutes. But when I saw this picture, I thought it represented the work that you all do.
thank you. Yes, it's part of what we love to support clients in is finding ways to ease into eating more nourishing, we'd call it real food,
Hmm.
very little processing, in a way that's realistic, right? Because trying to just change your lifestyle completely overnight doesn't work for anybody. We
It's
know
not
that,
sustainable.
right? So we spend a lot of time on just, talking with people about, well, what are their likes and dislikes? What is their schedule like? How can we slowly bring in more real food so that your body actually wants less and less processed food over time. It's just
Hmm.
our bodies are wise that way. So yeah, we love cooking, sharing what we cook, sharing how to create meal plans, sharing ways to reduce our time in the kitchen so it's actually realistic for people to
Okay.
do more preparation. But yeah, everyone's different, and we always meet people where they're at with that.
I love
Yeah.
that. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're going to come back to that because I want to talk about food access, real food, movable homes. Like there's a whole a little conversation I want to have around that, but I did want to just talk about this picture and the importance. I felt like it was relevant to the work that you all do. So here's another view of that. And I think this is gorgeous to have the representation from you said your great grandmother.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. All right, so now we can see the fabulous doors. We're heading out of the home. And yes, your farm sink is just it's huge, and I love it for you all.
It's
It's
huge.
it
we
is
we thought it was a little luxurious for a tiny house to start with, but when we realized how functional it was, like when we moved the house, a lot of stuff can just go in the sink and be protected.
okay, okay.
So we felt better about that
Yeah.
that luxurious step.
And
After
the
Yeah.
dish drying rack fits perfectly on one side.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
cuts it in half for dishes, but for washing and things. But then you don't have to have a dish rack on the counter.
okay, smart, smart. All right, this is I love this one.
So being a yoga teacher, I know we both feel really passionate about incorporating movement into our lives regularly, and especially being business owners, stress relief is really important. So there are multiple reasons why we make space to do yoga in the house. Like you'll
Hmm.
see, the table is folded down against the wall. We put the chairs up, and we can both do yoga together. A lot of people are surprised to hear that, but we make it happen. It's important to us, so we prioritize it.
And I think this is so important because so many people, I'll see comments sometimes of people that say to me, I could never live in a tiny house. I need to do this. I need to do that. But what you were speaking to about the priorities, you make adjustments for the things that are priorities in your life. And the things that people will try to say about a tiny house of the reason why they can't do it are the reasons why you should be doing it, because you're able to prioritize in a tiny house because life is different. And this is, I think it's just the opposite of what they are speaking to when they don't understand the concept of why this lifestyle really works.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
well put.
All right. Now, and this is one of my favorite pictures. I was like, okay, they have inspired me to what I would consider like a living shower. Is that what you would kind of call it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we're both so.
I have some fake plants in mine right now, but I was reevaluating life when I looked at it.
Yeah, plants are so important to both of us. And we, when we had a stationary house, the garden was very important to us. So like we really brainstormed about how can we bring plants into the equation. And so yeah, the shower just made so much sense because these are more tropical plants. They love the steam and the moisture.
Okay.
Yeah.
And talk about that sink, that gorgeous sink.
So this was another thing that was kind of like, where are we going to prioritize space in the bathroom? And China Rose was very much like, I am not going to live with an RV bathroom and squeezing around stuff and, like
washing your hands with those tiny little sinks.
Wash one hand at a time.
I got you.
So,
I got you.
So she's like, the bathroom definitely needs to be regular sized, like even apartment sized.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured the sink, you don't use it as much as you do the rest of the bathroom. So we could have it swivel in and out of the tub. When we're not using the tub, that's where you can use the sink.
Oh, very smart.
And it just drains right into the tub. And when you need to use the tub or the shower, you just swivel it out and it's out of the way. And it's, just a really easy way to convert, and it saves space, and it's still, we found a cute little copper sink, so it matched the aesthetic. It doesn't need to, be janky.
I love that. Yeah, janky. We don't do janky, do we, AJ?
No, I do not.
I love that. I'm gonna have to talk to you. That's a concept that I was trying to figure out for my little travel trailer, so I'm gonna have to revisit that. But that is so smart, and this is the part that I just think is so important in designing your own space and making it home and making it work for the things that just make sense. Like, why take up space in the bathroom for a sink that doesn't need to be there? How do we work around that? And I think that's just brilliant.
Yeah, thank you. And that is one thing that I feel really good about with almost anything I do. Like, always trying to feed two birds with one seed, right? Like, always trying to figure out how we can combine and make things work for everybody. And we went from 1,700 square feet into what is now 175 square feet.
Yeah.
And that 1,700 square feet that we had, plus probably the same amount outside it in our bigger house, we didn't use it all, and it was a pain to clean, and it was, you felt like it was empty, so you had to stuff it with things.
Yes.
And it just didn't make sense. Whereas now, like you were saying, when you prioritize things and make sure that you're thinking about those things that are most important, you can think outside the box and really combine and make, get creative about it, and combine the things you need with the things you may want, not necessarily need. But I want this to be this way, but I need this to be that way, and we can find a way to combine the two.
Right. So tell us, I didn't ask this in the beginning, tell us the size of your home. Someone asked that question, and I realized we didn't talk about that in the beginning. So give us the dimensions of your home.
Yeah, it's 175 square feet total. So maybe it might be 174 square feet, but it's 24 foot long and about 12 foot high. There we do have a skylight that sticks up an extra 5 or so inches, but it's around 12 feet high.
Okay.
And it's 8.5 at the top, and where the tires are, but because the walls are slanted, it's
7.5.
the entry is like 7.5 feet, and then it goes up to
Gotcha.
the
Gotcha.
barrel roof is 8.5 feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I love it. And so here's the door. And I wanted a door like this so bad, AJ, but it just didn't fit with my contemporary design. As I was thinking about it, I was like, I kept saying I could serve food outside of my door. That's where I kept envisioning my door. But I
Yeah.
love that you all incorporated this in your home.
Yeah.
And we have actually served drinks out of it. Like we every once in a while we'll do a volunteer like trash cleanup on the river or the ocean, and we'll set up the house to serve our elixirs out of.
Oh,
Yeah, at the
very
events.
cool. See, I was on the right track. I was so on the right track. All right, so this is one of my favorite pictures. It's just gorgeous.
Thank you. Yeah, she had just gotten a little bit of a makeover. This was probably maybe 3 years into her life. And so we had just like re-oiled the outside. And yeah, so we're at a live event here. And we love sharing the house. That last picture with AJ speaking with the women, like we love to share it, talk about it, provide this picture that life doesn't necessarily have to look a certain way. For there are options, there are possibilities, and we just love being real with people about what our lifestyle looks like, and hopefully we've seen these little light bulbs go on in people's
Yes.
faces.
Isn't that
I
cool when
love
you see the light bulb? And it's like,
Yes.
oh, okay. When it starts making sense. Absolutely. I love that light bulb moment as well.
Yes.
All right, and this was the picture I was referencing where I said your door is your logo because that is what is seen as you're traveling about.
Yeah, we get so many like honks and thumbs ups and waves from the highway. Like it's such a joy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. All righty.
Yeah, this is our other this is our culinary plant wall.
Yeah.
So culinary herbs for cooking. We have, all the ones that you would need to just snip off and you would have in your window box. But this we just put in the bathtub when we travel, and then once we're parked wherever we're going to be, we put it outside on hooks.
Very nice. Very nice. Very smart. Very smart. Okay, thank you for that elaborate tour. I appreciate the walkthrough and all of the information. So when people see your home, we've walked through it, we've talked to all of your decisions that went into it. What do you all want it to say about you all, I guess, individually, as a couple? What does your home represent for you?
For me, it represents freedom. It represents infusing beauty into our everyday lives. It also represents, for us, we went tiny in the first place because of finding mold in our living situation. And so for us to decide to build our own home, it allowed us to start from ground zero and incorporate all eco-friendly products that were going to be non-toxic to us. And so for us, it represents wellness too. We often use the term journey to wellness, like that. When we went tiny, that's what we embarked on, is this ability to make more conscious choices about our wellness.
So your personal wellness choices, and then now you're sharing that with others. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's one thing that we hear a lot is people that their health is such that they can't work, or they're on disability, or they are just getting by because they it's a rat race out there, right? A lot of people work 2 jobs, or they have a main job and then a side hustle, because it's hard to for most people to just make a living and get by. And so you hear that a lot. Like, I don't know if I would love to do this, but I can't. Like, I don't have the money, or I don't have the resources or the access. And you know, I understand the mindset when you're already struggling, to be
Right.
like, that's, I don't know if I could do that. But that's, I feel the most important reason to do it is because you're already struggling, and find a way, because there is a way to do it. Even if you don't get all of the really cool things that you want out of it, starting with what your needs are, you can, I feel like you could find a way. And I speaking from, someone, I grew up with no money. Like, we didn't have access to a lot of things. Single parent, 5 kids, we moved a lot. We had to share apartments, all of us, share a 2-bedroom apartment and 1 bathroom. And so I can see that mindset of like, don't have anything, don't come from anything, not going to get anything. I can see that. But also, I stepped out of that mindset, being a single parent myself, not intending to be, and figuring it out because I had to. And I think my son was probably 9 years old when I just kind of was like, you know what, I'm relying on roommates, and I'm relying on, kind of like this communal situation where the person you're sharing space with, you don't always align with, and you're worried about whether or not they're going to have their share of the rent, or whether or not they're going to decide to move somewhere else. I was done with that. And I'm like, I'm going to find a way to create my own space. And yes, I had to work 2 and 3 jobs to do it, but I found a neighbor who had this garage that he had been wanting to turn into a little apartment for years, and his wife was like, yeah, he keeps talking about that. I'm like, well, I'll do it for you if I could live in it. And that was my first tiny space that was mine. And it wasn't, I didn't own it,
No,
but
I
like, I
understand.
built
Understand.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
I created it for my son and I, so that we didn't have to rely on anybody else. And as far as like space sharing or money or anything like that. And from there on, I was just like, that this is how it's got to be. And I found a way to do it. And now I want to inspire other people to find a way to create their own situation, to change their situation, when they feel like there's no way.
So I think that's a good segue for, so I've got 2 things now on the table that I want to come back to. But this, I think that's a good segue, AJ, into what I want to talk about in kind of how we connected. So when we met in 2017 in New Orleans, and it was just kind of the coolest thing that you all were there, and we were there. But in 2017, that was a pivotal time for me in the tiny house movement, because having joined the movement in 2015, and um, my initial thought was we were challenging the status quo of housing. And what we would be working toward was um, accessible and inclusive housing, and diverse housing, and housing that included the people that hadn't been included in the larger housing models. When you look at the numbers, the people who are left out of home ownership numbers year after year. I felt like if we were challenging the status quo of housing, then we would want to look at and approach housing from a perspective that allowed those people to have access to housing. And as I started pushing against the movement, and realized that really wasn't what the larger movement was focused on. It was more focused on just living in smaller spaces, but permission to live in these smaller spaces. And it wasn't reaching for those people who hadn't achieved home ownership, who were still chasing that elusive um, dream, the American dream that really wasn't built for them. And so as I kept pushing, I realized either I was getting resistance or I was getting silence, or I was, at one point I got an anonymous threatening message like, hey, we're kind of tired of you talking about this. And so at that point, the pivotal point for me was, okay, I can't keep pushing against people who don't want to have these conversations. So I need to go over here and create space and hold space for these people that aren't being included in this conversation. And I need to start talking to the people who want to be included in these conversations, the people who are thinking in this same direction. And AJ, I think that was a lot of what you just spoke about in kind of how you got to where you were. So what I'm asking you all is to kind of maybe evaluate your involvement in the movement around those things, that how we connected and the importance of that for you all.
Yeah, I can't say how refreshing it was when we met you, and the presentation that you and Lee and Dominique were providing, because our feelings around the movement were a little
disappointed.
We had this feeling of disappointment about the tiny house movement. Like, we were so excited to join it. We went to a couple of events, like big festivals and things, and the focus was always very how do you put it?
It was a money grab.
Okay, that's a good way to put it.
Leave it to AJ. Leave it to AJ to tell us to shoot with without any filter. Thank you, AJ. You almost made me spit out my water. I appreciate you.
Yeah, well put. Yeah.
But I mean, seriously, it was like all these companies, this painting, what was it? Bear was a sponsor, and like all these big companies, and the tiny houses were huge that were being shown. They were 400 square feet and bigger. And not that that's a bad thing. It was just like, as soon as there's a good idea, those big conglomerates are going to glom on and be like, how can we, take over and make this great? And so people were like buying them 3 and 4 at a time to rent out on Airbnb and put them in their backyard to, it just seemed like it was it had taken a different turn than what we originally were excited about, which was community, people like really seeking out a different lifestyle and way to live and to kind of change the status quo. And it definitely didn't seem like that at those events.
Yeah. And I go ahead.
No,
Yeah.
And so I want to say, I don't take issue with anyone that's in it for profit. I don't take any issue with that. And I don't think that that's what you were saying. So I just kind of want to put it out there before somebody says, oh my God, that's not the issue. But go ahead, China Rose.
No, I think that the part of the tiny house movement that really spoke to us was that of people feeling more empowered in their lives, right? And that, because that's what we do every day. We feel passionate about supporting people in feeling more empowered, about knowing what their options are, about making informed decisions, about putting their dreams, making their dreams a priority, and finding ways to work towards them. And that goes for nutrition, it goes for wellness, it goes for our living situations too. So I feel like when we found you, Jewel, it was a breath of fresh air. And since then have met many other people who speak to that aspect of it, the heart of the movement, the people that live it every day, the people whose passions come through in their living situations. And I that's why I love this series you're doing too, because it really speaks to that part of it that gets missed so often.
Yeah, for sure. And that I definitely feel like you can absolutely profit from it and not or you can monetize it without corrupting it,
Understood.
and that's where I was going with, because we also thought about like, okay, once we get to a point where, we want to settle down a little bit more and not travel as much, maybe we buy a little piece of land and create kind of a center where it's a wellness center. People can come and camp or, hang out with their tiny houses, or like, we have thought about that. Absolutely. But it's a little bit different aspect of it.
Right. You're bringing
and
something
that was
good to the movement. Yes.
Yeah. And again, that communal feeling. That's where and that was too. And when we heard you guys were in New Orleans and we were there at the same time, we were actually going to leave that day. We're like, oh, I guess we're staying a couple more days.
I was so glad to have made that connection. Yeah, it was
so awesome to be there.
It was.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of go back to the wellness and the real food piece of the work that you all are doing. One of the things as I imagine and dream of the community work that I want to be able to do within the movement, focuses on, housing as a, access to housing as a right, but it has a lot to do with food access. And there were some numbers that I looked up where it said 23.5 million Americans have to travel more than 1 mile in urban areas and more than 10 miles in rural areas to reach the nearest full service grocery store. And so when you consider that, it's redlining in another way, food access, not having access to safe and affordable and nutritious food, then obviously is going to lead to health issues. And so it's that circle of, we can't be better physically because we don't have the access that we need. And so your table there kind of stuck out for me, with the wellness work that you're doing, the garden that's on the side of your house. Can you all talk a little bit about what that means to you as well with the work that you're doing?
Again, I feel like a lot of what we have the opportunity to do is provide these examples of what's possible. And so we let's say via social media, we post a lot about like how we look for healthy food in different communities and how we make meals from what we were able to find locally, and how we might plan for the week in terms of what we were able to procure in it, when we're in one city or another. We love to share when we find great farmers markets and make sure people know that they exist and know when they're happening, and know that have a realistic view of what it costs maybe to then also procure food from a farmer's market versus the grocery store. And so that's really important to us. It's just as we travel, especially through different communities, like this is what we're finding in this community. These are the resources. These are the small businesses that are doing their best to provide healthy options for the people who live there and really highlight them and hold them up. We did, traveling through Flint, Michigan, traveling through New Orleans, like these are, we tried to present, and we did our best to present a picture of what the healthy local resources were, so that hopefully people, their view of these places shifted a little bit and saw what people are doing to try to make a positive change and happen in their area. So, so that's what came up for me when that topic came up. Anything that you'd want to add to that? Permaculture.
Well, yeah, I was just getting ready to say, AJ, the work that you do around permaculture, absolutely.
Yeah, well, it's great because permaculture is just another avenue. Regenerative farming is another one, but it all comes from indigenous wisdom, right? Like how we steward the land and how we receive from it without taking too much, and that is something that even though I love being in the garden and we travel a lot, I don't have a garden. I mean, we kind of do, but we don't have a big garden anymore. I seek out people who have a piece of property or a small farm that they need help and don't know where to start, or they've had it all set up, but they don't have help to maintain it or whatever, or can't afford to hire workers or anything. So if I can combine with them and show, be a laborer for or whatever, or an idea person, or help bring something to fruition, then I get my garden fix. Yeah. I help someone in the community, and then we also can teach people who, like this last place we were in, North Carolina. There was a neighbor who wanted to start a garden and didn't really know where to start, and so there was it was like, you see what we're doing, and it's kind of like peeking over the fence. Oh, maybe I can do that too, but I need help. And so it's like bringing back this neighborly kind of communal helping each other. That I feel is really important, and I can do that with permaculture while we travel. I don't have to have my own piece of land in order to really bring that message to people.
Yeah.
And that felt really good. I'd have to say that, we have stayed in RV parks with our house. Our house is RVIA certified, and we have that option, but we much prefer to partner with small farms or families that have land, or community gardens, like places that we can also have an impact and provide some support while we travel. And it helps us feel like we're actually, we get a feel for being a part of that community.
Yeah,
and
right.
So that's been so rewarding. Huge piece.
I connected with a few networks. One was the WWOOFing network, right, worldwide organization of organic farms. And then I connected with Workaway. That's another really good one. That's the one I prefer. And then Trusted House Sitters. Like, there's a lot of networks out there now where there's no exchange of money. It's just everybody helping each other. You have land, we have skills, and that's a way that we've been able to find people through, because there's friends of friends and family of friends, right? Friends and family. Like there's always people who are like, hey, come over here and help us. Like we do get requests quite often. But there's sometimes it's like we don't know someone in the area that we're going to travel to. We'll just go through one of those networks and find like-minded people. Usually it's pretty easy now because it's the age of information and connection through the digital age. Even though I don't like technology,
right?
You
got to use it sometimes.
You do, and it's been amazing. It's really been helpful. And I did notice someone asked about, I don't know where it was, but
the question about moving your house, was that?
Yeah,
do you move your house yourself?
Yeah, and we do it ourselves. We know people who also have paid a moving company to move their house, because they aren't confident in themselves.
Or you're on the move all the time. Yeah,
all the time.
Yeah, you're on the move. So I pay somebody the professionals to move my house, but I'm not moving my house like you all are.
Right, understandably. But and we just kind of trial by fire had to do it. Neither one of us had towed anything or camped in an RV or anything like that. That just wasn't our upbringing, or we didn't know, but we were like, we could do it. Maybe. That's how it was a learning curve, and for the first year we didn't back it up really.
The thing about doing the opposite and it moves in the opposite direction just throws me off every single time.
It was quite a learning curve, but honestly, like, it got to a point where it's like, okay, well, we have to this time, so let's just do it. and it took us, hours to set up or, whatever. But now it's like nothing,
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes. We're in a spot. It could be a super tight spot. I'm over there with one hand.
Oh, go AJ. Go AJ.
I told her she was my hero the other day because she backed into a gas station. I'm like, wait a minute, who are you? It's awesome. Yeah, and I can drive the house, and I will if I need to. Like when AJ broke her ankle in Rhode Island and we were across the country from our home base, like I took it on, and I made it happen. But the cool thing is, because we own our own business, and I do a lot of the correspondence and client support, I can work while AJ drives a lot of the time, and it works out great for us.
Yeah.
So she's definitely the trucker of the family.
Yeah. Yeah. What have your travels looked like during the pandemic? How has that impacted how you move, how you're looking at your tiny house journey? What have you discovered during this time?
I think that creating community has never been more important. I feel like we, a big part of what we do is help support people in feeling more empowered in their health and in their health care. So from the very beginning, we have put out free information. We have provided resources. We have, talked about ways to bolster our immune systems and what can work against that. And from a travel standpoint, I feel like the people that we then partner with, and whether we're working on their land or doing some work trade, have never been so grateful for community and connection. And I think if anything, this experience has just taken all of our gratitude levels and brought it to a whole new place, really a lot of elevation. Yeah. So if we're going to pick the positives out of what's happened, that's going to be what I would focus on. Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you all, AJ, did you want to add anything before I ask my next question? You look like you were thinking.
No, that was said perfectly. I agree.
Okay.
Awesome.
Have you all in this journey discovered anything new about yourself or yourselves as a couple?
I have so much less in terms of physical things that I own. And I love things like, vintage stores and thrift stores and estate sales. And I used to like, ooh, I like that. That needs to be mine. And, and now I almost look at those experiences as like a museum. Like I can appreciate beautiful things. I can even take pictures of beautiful things, but I don't have to own it for it to give me joy. And so that's been a big shift for me when, I collected things,
She had a lot of gigas.
And it's, I've slowly let go of those things. We didn't necessarily like, I know some people who've gone cold turkey in their tiny house adventure and just like, no storage unit, no nothing. And I respect that. I honor that. I couldn't do that quite that way. So we had the tiniest storage unit you could possibly have. And we've slowly, every time we're back in that area, we get rid of more and it's easier.
Yeah.
So
I can relate to that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you? What have you learned?
I feel like what I've learned probably the most about myself is that I have a tendency to revert into learned behaviors when I'm frustrated and overwhelmed. Things that I worked on many years ago to let go of and to change. Being in a tiny space with someone you adore and just have the utmost respect for, it helps. It's like a mirror. It's like I was able to see more of that irritation or overwhelm come out in bad behaviors, because I was like, man, I see how it affects, you know, China Rose. Like, she'll get tense, or she would get, you know, like kind of a deep breath, like, you know,
where you don't have
like,
the
okay,
space where you can go
you know,
opposite ends of the house and not understand how your behavior is negatively impacting somebody else. Absolutely. You have to look at
exactly.
what your behavior has caused. I love that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that was the biggest thing for me. Yeah.
I think we communicate better now than we ever have. I feel like we are almost forced to talk about things in the moment, instead of letting things simmer.
She forces me to talk about things in the moment.
But that being
I think
said,
this is so important, because I always see the people that say, you know, I could do this as a single person, but I couldn't do this with my mate. And of course, I can't speak to that because Nina, my dog, has to deal with me. But I always refer to people, the families and the couples that I know who have said the same thing. It has improved our relationship. It has made us have to talk. It has made us have to address the things that maybe would be left unsaid if we had more space to, you know, kind of ignore each other.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And you know, for someone who just can't relate or see that being the case for them, the other thing is we spend a lot of time outside. Like AJ, if we're on a property, she works in the garden. Like, we both love to hike, and so there is the opportunity to take space and time if you need to think through things and then come back together in a way that is more centered and positive, hopefully. And that's what we found is, you know, either or. But in the end, our relationship has only blossomed living tiny. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. What is one thing that you wish people understood about tiny houses and maybe the journey?
What do you think?
One thing?
Okay, a couple. Go ahead, AJ. Go ahead. You probably have like 10. Give me your top 10.
Yeah, right.
Man, I could ramble on for days. You know, I would say, kind of going back to what I was saying about people not thinking they could do it. Like, it's too hard, or it's too expensive, or I don't have access to the things I need to make it happen. I would say that's probably my top thing that I want people to realize, is that no matter your situation, everything's figure outable, right? Everything is in some way or another figure outable.
I love figure outable.
This is just it's just a different kind of it's like life is challenging. Life, no matter what position you have, or how big your house or how small your house, or if you're on the move or stationary, life is challenging. It all has its own challenges. This is just a different kind of challenge. And so if you can take on, you know, a challenge, make it small, just do something, one step towards what you really want in your life that seems challenging, and then build upon that, because it really is it really is figure outable. I don't even know another way to say it.
No, I love that. I love that. So China, before you answer that question, I think that is an important thing to note. And I talked about this last weekend in one of my sessions, because I think what people get stuck with is looking at other people's homes and their journey, and thinking their journey has to work like that, when really they should be focused on the home for them and the journey for them. And you know, as much as we want to inspire and share on social media, sometimes that causes harm, because people don't see how it will work for them and how it's accessible for them. And so I think that figure outable piece of it, AJ, is so big. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was one thing that when we first met in New Orleans, I was saying, like, people we were showing our house because we were excited about the possibilities and sharing kind of the aspect of going tiny. And people were asking, if we designed, could were we designers, and could we design them a space, and all these different aspects. I'm like, well, we're not trying to monetize this in that way, and mainly because we already have our own have a business that we're focusing on, but the main thing is to inspire people to do it their way, what works for you. And that was a big thing that people would ask a lot, that we kind of started to change how we presented our space. It's like this was a long time coming. This was a process, and it was very specific to our lifestyle.
Right.
So that was something that I felt really important to bring out right away, instead of just look at our really cool space.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I agree with that. And that's kind of how I talk to my journey as well. Okay, China Rose, one thing or that you wish people understood about the movement or a tiny house or the journey from your perspective.
I think that maybe I'll speak for myself. Like I grew up thinking that the picture of success was buying your own large home, the larger the better, right? And having all the things, having the fancy car and having all the right furniture, and presenting that picture to the world of being self-sustained in that way. This is my space. I can afford to have this space. And I just know for me, when I learned more about the tiny house movement, I loved that it broke down all those barriers, that it provided this other picture, because those things really weren't as important to me. Like the idea of travel lights me up. That's my priority. I learn every day from my experiences and creating this worldview. And that is more important to me than any big fancy house I could have. And so I think that's helpful, is to, consider that maybe whether you call it the American dream or the picture of success, that can look different for different people. And that's okay. We have different priorities, and I'm not judging anyone else for their priorities.
Right.
So I think that's a great thing to kind of step back and take a look at for yourself. It's like, what's important to you, and maybe what you thought was important was more what society told you was important.
Yeah. And you're following somebody else's dream for your life that really doesn't work for you.
Right. And I think the only other thing I would add to that is that instead of feeling like you have to do it all by yourself, I like this idea of building community is so much more enriching, and some of the load off and the stress off of us feeling like we have to work all the time in order to afford that house. You can share space, whether you travel a lot like we do, or you're more of like an accessory dwelling unit and a more stationary, partnering with someone who owns land. Coming back to that idea is so enriching in so many ways. It's okay to want to be with other people and work with other people. We don't have to do everything ourselves.
Right. How often do you all travel with your home? So like I shared that I don't actually physically travel with my house, but the lifestyle allows me the opportunity, me personally, the opportunity to travel, because that's what I want to do. So kind of when you all, I guess, I don't know, do you start thinking at the beginning of the year what your schedule is going to look like and how often you're going to move and places you want to go? What does that look like?
I laugh because we're not nearly that organized. It's I love that this lifestyle allows us to follow our hearts and our instincts a lot more often. We do, because we own a business, project out for a period of time, and know that we have certain events that we want to be in one state or another for.
Gotcha.
But if we get someplace and we're like, this doesn't feel good, we have, the capacity to pick up and leave
I
the
love
next
it.
day.
I love it. That's the one
Which
thing
we've
about
done.
wheels. We can always roll out. That's one thing I say. I can always roll out. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I have to say, like, that sentiment is really important to point out. Like, we were in Napa, California, which is one of our home bases, when the fires were happening, in the last, was it 2017, and then again a couple of years later. And we were on a property that, they came pretty close to, and we capacity to pack within an hour and hitch up and move. And I can't tell you how amazingly
I'm sure.
just relieved we were
Yeah.
in that situation, and we were able to find another place to be. And it's like, as much as, whatever you want to call it, climate change, and we're meeting with these situations where it's not always safe to be in certain areas. We don't, to have options to be mobile is pretty rewarding in a lot of ways, and that's one of them, this sense of safety. So that we really found that to be true during that time. Yeah.
Yeah. As I talk about communities using movable homes and businesses for communities, outside of the reduction in infrastructure cost that that type of community affords people, there's also the safety option, especially like in a place like New Orleans, or like you said with the fires, where when you're aware of some impending danger, then you can relocate and still salvage home and salvage the business and your physical safety. And so I think that is some of the things that have to be or should be considered when people are thinking of one of the benefits of creating community from movable homes and businesses. To me, it's just one of the things on the list of why it makes sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It makes complete sense, except for to the municipalities.
Right. It doesn't make sense from a dollar perspective. Absolutely. It doesn't make sense to them from a dollar perspective. Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a question. What would be the title of your autobiography, either as individuals, as a couple, right now, where you are in life and the movement in your home and everything that you're doing? What would be the title of your autobiography?
Oh man.
What came up for me right away was just like traveling medicine woman. Like,
I
that
love it.
Yeah.
every time that term comes up in my mind, it just like, it feels like it fits perfectly. Because not only are we building our picture of wellness every single day, and what we're learning, but we're also still able to support clients no matter where we are. We teach, workshops and lead retreats, throughout our whole travels. So and I love too, like the farm we were on in North Carolina just recently, like she came down with something and wasn't feeling well while we were there, and we had everything we needed within our house to support, provide some support and guide her through that, as best we could. And it just felt so good to be able to contribute in that way, and that's what we do as we travel. So that's my autobiography.
Yeah. Gosh.
It's a hard one though. Yeah.
How about have the audacity, will travel?
What was it? Have the audacity and will travel. I love it.
Yeah.
I like that, AJ. That's an excellent title for you. I think you need to get started on that right away. That was good. I love that. I love that.
Or have chutzpah, will travel.
I like that. So China Rose, that brings me to I have someone bothering me right now. That brings me to when you all got a chance to come visit me when you all were here in North Carolina. the gift that you brought me. Talk about your product some. So, especially the one that you brought me, which I haven't tried yet, but talk about your
Yeah.
product. Yes, go ahead, AJ, get it. I know you got it over there. Let's see it.
Now,
Thank you.
Being a clinical Havana action.
Hold on.
Now, I've been a clinical herbalist for
Yes.
over 20 years. So we've had a line of private label herbal products for quite a few years now. But this particular one, our Free Spirit Elixir, is kind of the child of many years of thought and experience. So we, working with people who have very clear health goals in mind, one of the things we've always supported them in is looking for alternatives to things that are kind of roadblocks in maybe getting better or feeling better. And, so alcohol is a good example. Like we're not anti, moderate alcohol use when it makes sense, but for a lot of people on a wellness journey, it can be hindering. And so we formulated Free Spirit Elixir just to be that other option. Like, here are medicinal herbs that not only help you feel more relaxed and take the edge off at the end of a long day, but it has herbs that are considered to be slightly euphoric and socially lubricating, so that they're great when you're, getting together with friends or meeting new people. So it's a way to weave in something that's equally helpful with those reasons that we might drink, but it's actually helping to build health instead of diminish it. And we see it as a great option for people who choose not to drink at all, or just people who want to weave a more nourishing option throughout their week. So we're super excited about it, and that's something we're sharing as we travel this year for sure.
Absolutely. Congratulations to you on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
What is one question that I didn't ask that you all wish I had, maybe about your journey, or something that you want to share that I didn't ask about?
Where do we keep our TV?
We actually get that question a lot. Where's the TV?
Oh my God. And that's even funnier to me, because like you all, I'm not a big TV person. And so for months, I would get that same question, where's the TV? And it's like, I don't have one right now. And I really don't care. But now I have one. And it's just, that question is so funny to me, because it's like people are really concerned with, where is the TV? Okay, so
yeah, they're really concerned with that.
They are concerned with, where's the TV? AJ, where's the TV? Do you have a TV? Where's the TV?
We don't have a TV.
I love it.
That's all.
That is so funny to me. Just because it's like, these people are really concerned with, where is the TV? That was one of my questions, and the other question was, how do you get to that loft over there? And it's like, and in the beginning, when my show aired, this is funny to me. When my show aired in the beginning, it was like just trying to get to finish, and I was absolutely broke. So I didn't have my ladder for that second loft yet. And that was one of the things that I was fretting about as we were filming. And I was like, somebody's going to ask that. And the producer was like, no, they're not. They're not. And when I tell you, I had so many questions of, how do you get to that loft? Where's your TV? And I was like, I know it. I knew it. It's like, I feel like people go in on a microscope in a tiny house, and they're like, so sometimes it'll be something on my desk. If I've taken a picture, and somebody will, what is that on your desk? It's like, oh my God, are you really looking at that level? So yeah, people are paying attention. So, okay, I'm sorry, I did not ask where the TV was. Is there anything else that I should have asked that I didn't ask that you wish I had?
No, I was just thinking the other common question we get is, so can one of you be cooking in the house while the other one is driving the truck? Right. And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting thought. There's that great movie that Lucille Ball did. What is it called?
I think it's like The Big Yellow Trailer or something.
Have
like
you
that.
seen
No,
that
I
one?
haven't seen that. I can only imagine
it's a classic.
hilarious, though. She was
Yes.
hilarious,
So
so I can imagine it was.
Yeah, so that's one of the scenes they depict for sure, is like trying to like function in the house while someone's pulling it. But no, I think ultimately, like, the way that this all makes sense, and the unpredictability of this lifestyle, and is that we keep each other laughing every single day. Like, we literally, there's not a day that goes by that one of us isn't trying to like just keep the mood light. We're telling jokes left and right. Like, we have a lot of music in our life, like these things on a daily basis that help just keep things light, keep our creativity flowing, keep us feeling inspired and motivated. And that's, I think, yeah, if anything, that's the question we get a lot too, is like, how do you deal with the uncertainty of not knowing where you're going to be in a month? And, with a business, how are you going to make money over the next 6 months? And that's what I would say, is that we keep each other laughing, and we keep music and beauty and, community at our top priorities in our daily lives. Yeah.
And I'm very confident in myself that if, stuff went down and I had to go make us some money somehow, like, I could do it. Like, whatever.
I'm confident as well, AJ. There's no doubt in my mind that you'd make it happen. So yes, I'm with you.
Make it happen.
I know that you would make it happen for sure. Absolutely. So tell everyone. So one of the questions we had, the name of your product again, and please tell everyone how they can find you on social media, all of your information around the wellness business. Share that information, please.
Sure. Yeah.
And
thank
it's
you.
going to be in the description of the video. So let me say that, but let me ask you all to share that information.
Perfect. So our business is called China Rose Wellness. So that's our website. That's how you find us on Instagram and Facebook at this point. And our flagship products that we're sharing around the country is called Free Spirit Elixir, and that's highlighted on the website. It's in our herbal apothecary page, so pretty easy to find. Yeah.
All right. I thank you all very much for joining me today, and I am going to this is, again, Conversations on Intimate Spaces. China Rose and AJ have joined this morning. This is one part of the series of the Creating Home, a Tiny House series. So on alternating Sundays, we're having conversations like this, where we're, discovering that it is really bigger than just the tiny house. And then the alternating Sunday, it's What's Your Question, where I'm trying to help answer some of the basic questions that I am asked within the movement to help someone else find their way in this journey. And so I thank you all very, very much for joining us this morning. I appreciate everyone for hanging in past the technical difficulties. And AJ and China Rose, I appreciate you all for hanging in with us as well. Thank you. I'm glad that we were able to have this conversation. I was so torn when you all were visiting, and I was like, we should just try to go live and have this conversation. But I think we covered everything and more in this conversation, and I'm grateful that you all joined this morning and allowed us to access into your home, into your life, and shared your journey with the audience. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, absolutely. It was my absolute pleasure. Thanks everybody for joining. Have a great rest of your Sunday.